we do? I can announce today that we're going to consult on taking the best aspects of the American Chapter 11 system and give good companies breathing space to allow them to rescue or restructure the business in the face of the credit crunch. This change should ensure that fewer good companies end up in liquidation and fewer people lose their jobs through no fault of their own. But of course, we cannot and we should not save all companies that fail. When that happens, we need to make sure the employees who lose their livelihoods get the support and the help they need to get a job as soon as possible. That's why I believe, again, there are things the government should be doing now with our welfare system. It should give every person a proper, immediate assessment of their needs and capabilities when they go and claim job seekers' allowance. If they don't quickly get a job, it should refer them to a network of, crucially, private and voluntary providers who can give them, much better than the state, the tailored support they need. Chris Grayling has been setting this out in a series of brave announcements, which I believe will make a real difference. These private and voluntary organisations would give people specialised training. It could be helping with writing their CV. It could be giving them confidence in interviewing technique. But whatever it is, again, vitally and differently from the Conservatives, the government should pay these providers by the results that they achieve, so we can make sure those people who lose their jobs in the economic downturn get the help and the support they need to get back to work. Now, we also need to take immediate action to help homeowners and those who want a home but can't get one. Both are struggling today. The former, homeowners, have the threat of repossession hanging over them as they come up to remortgage. That's why we support, indeed, we actually proposed it, the government's plan to help reopen the mortgage market with the special liquidity scheme. Now, the latter, people who want to get on the housing ladder, just cannot get the finance together to buy their first place. The papers this week have been full of government off-the-record briefings about what they may or may not do to help the housing market, not least on stamp duty. Now, last October, we announced a fully funded stamp duty cut, taking 9 out of 10 first-time buyers out of this tax altogether. So what is Gordon Brown waiting for? He should do this tomorrow. There is no need to dither when thousands of people are being locked out of meeting their dream of owning their first home. And there is another area where the government has got to stop dithering and start acting. It needs to take immediate action to protect savers, so we don't return to the scenes we saw outside branches of Northern Rock last September. For a start, savers need the reassurance that if another bank goes bust, their hard-earned cash is protected. So again, the government should act, and act now, before the parliamentary recess. We've offered them the parliamentary time to do it, to protect the first £50,000 for each saver in the event of their bank collapsing. People need that security to be in place now, not in the future. There's nothing from stopping them to do it. They have our full support. They just need to get on with it. Once more, last autumn, we called for a special resolution scheme to rescue failing banks. Now, the government here is now acting, but let's be clear. I applaud the FSA's frank assessment of its role in the run-up to Northern Rock. But most bank failures follow some degree of regulatory failure. So we believe the regulator alone cannot pull the trigger on a bank rescue. Instead, the Bank of England must play the central role in rescuing banks. That's the system they have in America, where the Fed saved Bear Stearns over a weekend. We need that sort of leadership here. Next, we've got to help families with their finances and the rocketing cost of living. Of course, many of the problems families face do come from abroad. There's the global food crunch, which is hitting people at the checkouts, and there's the rising cost of oil and gas, hitting people at the pumps and whenever they pay their electricity or their gas bills. But let's also remember this. One of the biggest demands on people's money doesn't come from sort of far-flung offenders, it comes from the government. It comes from the never-ending demand for taxation. Council tax, income tax, VAT, road tax, tax on drink, tax on petrol. So I'm not going to stand here and say that there's some sort of magic wand I can wave to bring food prices and gas prices down. There isn't. But what I can say is this, that a Conservative government would stop making it worse. That's why we've campaigned so hard, and why we'll continue to campaign so hard, to get the government to reverse their decision to impose a retrospective tax on cars that people bought 5, 6, 7 years ago. This is not a green tax, this is a stealth tax. It is paying for motoring motorists who really are already paying enough, and the government should recognise that. It's also why we will give people the power to stop excessive council tax rises through local referendums. And it's why we're consulting, as George announced a couple of weeks ago, on a fare fuel stabiliser. I think this is a very important initiative. When oil prices rise, instead of government increasing tax, as they do now, we would actually cut the duty. Of course, when oil prices fall, the payback for that is that taxes would go back up. But the fare fuel stabiliser will really help Britain's families. Because the situation today, I just don't think is fair. Oil goes up, the tax goes up, and people, as they fill up their cars, actually are taking all the pain, and the government's getting all the gain. A fare fuel stabiliser will end that. With us, the government will share the pain and help families in that important way. But the only sustainable way to reduce the demand for taxation, to cut the cost of living, is actually to bring down the cost of government. And that is the next part of our economic recovery plan. After the immediate action to help the employees, to help the homeowners, to help the savers, to help the families, we need long-term action to repair the damage that the government has made of our public finances and to bring back basic, good housekeeping. Now, this won't be easy, because in the decades ahead, there will, of course, be pressure to spend more on the essentials. But the taxpayer can't really take any more of the pain. Indeed, they need some relief. And our public finances are already strained from massive borrowing. So how do we square this circle? As I said back in May, a Conservative government will make sure that Britain starts living within her means. That is what households do up and down the country. When people get a pay rise, they don't go and blow it all at once, and then go to the bank manager and ask for even more money. They spend some, and they put some aside in the kitty. That's exactly what government should do. That's why we've said, again and again, we will share the proceeds of growth. Backed by our pledge of independently audited fiscal rules, we will make sure that over the economic cycle, we grow government more slowly than the economy. As a result, spending will fall as a share of national income, and that means we'll be able to reduce borrowing and taxes on hard-pressed families. Now, after the splurge of recent years, the new spending totals for the years 2008-9 to 2010-11 actually show public spending growing by 2% in real terms, below the 2.75% trend rate of growth for the economy. That is why we've said we'll stick to Labour's spending totals. Taken alone, they're tight. But with rising inflation, unemployment creeping upwards, they will become tighter still. But if overall the way we live within our means is sharing the proceeds of growth, then the real beef, if you like, comes from attacking the causes of the bigger state and rising public spending. So we want to cut the cost.
There we are, David Cameron addressing members of the Confederation of British Industry. He's going to be moving on to talk more about how to protect businesses in the credit crunch, but also taking the opportunity to outline Tory plans to help homeowners, savers, motorists and many other categories.